So in this one, we're going to work on a jumping pose. And so first, I want to establish the overall gesture and flow of the pose, the feeling of the action that we're going for. So I'll start with the head, and then a little curve for the neck, orientation of the shoulders, and a bit of curve for the body. So sort of jumping right into the bean shape, so focusing on the pinching of one side and the extension of the other. And then a large sweeping line for the upper leg, circle for the knee. And so with this particular one, I really want to focus on, the contorting of the body, the overlaps of the body that you see when somebody's jumping, and try to express some of the energy in that movement. So with the arm, something that's a little bit more gestural. The proportions are probably a little bit off, but again, I think it's important that at this stage of the work, you really try to get in the overall energy and flow of what you're looking for, and a little bit less, critical about things being perfect. I mean, obviously proportions are great if you can get those off the gesture. That's fantastic. But you can always go back and edit the gesture and get your proportions right. So even this leg, I feel like it's a bit large by comparison, but I'm just going to keep moving through the sketch. So I wanted the other arm to be back and away from the body, just to kind of show a little bit of that energy. So like when you're jumping forward, maybe you're lunging, and then you let some of the other things fall back. So it's a little bit of that twisting and that contrapposto that you would see. So the other leg being down and tucked back also gives a little bit more energy to it. I could have brought that leg forward and it would have been a little bit more of a sliding kind of leap. But by tucking the other leg, it's almost like they're jumping over something and trying to get their legs and their lower section up a little bit higher. So showing the orientation of the head, and again, really focusing on the shift in orientation from the head, torso, pelvis. I can't stress that enough. It's one of those things where if you start doing that, you're immediately going to see your work get better. So now we can take this, soft erase it back. We've got enough of the pose in place. And there's a lot that we could correct as we progress forward through the sketch. So there's a lot that you kind of just get used to seeing through, and that's a good thing. You really want to get used to seeing through your own work and through your rough sketches, and getting to a point where you say, I can see that next stage of what I'm going to do here. So even though I'm drawing in bits of the anatomy and bony landmarks like the collarbones, I'm still trying to use a little bit of angular representation. And what this does, it allows me to kind of check the work, still adjusting proportions and maneuvering things just a little bit. But ultimately, I feel like whenever you use your angles, you're in a little bit more of a design state of mind. And it can really be a nice way to break up the monotonous thinking. So maybe you're a little bit more prone to using curves, and we definitely want to use a lot of curves to convey fluidity and organic forms. But then every now and then angular lines, besides the fact that they basically mean strength and they convey a sense of strength and rigidness, they can also be a really great way to design and pinpoint inaccuracies in your work. So just think of it like if you were to design an architectural rendering and how you would use angles to map out space. You can do that same thing with the human body. So I think that for proportions, angles are probably a little bit more superior, where organic lines are going to be a bit more whimsical, especially in the way that you express them. You're almost trying to throw them more. So landing on a specific point becomes a lot harder to do. So this is a nice segue into preliminary to doing the anatomy. Where with the anatomy, I'm going to pull back and go back into a little bit more of the organic line making. So this bit of rigidness over the gesture can be a nice, really a nice coupling of the tool sets, I guess. And again, I feel like it helps me with things like proportions and alignment, and but be careful not to overdo it. So again, it's a big part of this is a sense of balance. If you use too many angular lines, you get something that looks very robotic and stiff, or too many of your primitive forms that we've talked about. But then that coupled with a nice sense of organic flowing forms will give you strength where you need it and a certain softness where you need it. And that's when you're going to start getting figure drawings that look more professional, that you're happier with. And now there is times that you're stylistically going to do other things. There's definitely styles where they use a lot of rigidness and it looks beautiful. Mainly if they're going for that stylistic representation, but yeah, it's really a mixed bag of tricks, and it's what do you really want to see in your work? It ultimately boils down to. So now I've got a lot of this kind of placed. I've adjusted some proportions here and there. I try to think of it as I'm a little bit closer to the end result. Is it the end result? No. Can I still make changes? Yes. I think that it's very important for you to look at this like you're always maneuvering. You're always working with a ball of clay, and really being in that frame of mind. If not, you'll settle on something that isn't your best work too quickly, and your mentality will be too rigid of an approach, and you maybe won't feel like you can figure something out. But if you kind of let loose and say, I'm maneuvering, I'm adjusting, I'm tweaking, but in a manner that is productive as well. So, something where you keep moving forward, then you generally can, find your rhythm and figure out a certain bit of anatomy. So there's times when I go to draw an arm or a leg and it's not coming out right and I don't know why. And then I just revisit it, maybe draw a different angle. And then all of a sudden, boom, it just comes out, and it comes out noticeably better than when I was trying to get it the first or second time. Sometimes it's just approaching it with a different state of mind. And these are at times in the same day. It's not like I'm saying, I studied legs for a week and then I came back to it. Sometimes it's the very next sketch. But again, I think that's where warming yourself up and finding your rhythm is a really big part of this. Because this stuff. When you've drawn bodies over and over again, somewhere in your mind, it's there. This stuff. It's recalling it and utilizing it when you need it that isn't always the easiest. But if you can have confidence in your ability, and again, knowing, hey, I've done this before and it came out nice. I know I can do it again. And just alleviating any kind of stress, relaxing yourself, trying a different approach. As simple as this head is, it's a very simple, primitive shape, but I needed to move it around a bit. I knew that by moving it, I could get some more interest to this pose. And it's a simple thing, but it's the same idea. It's moving things around, approaching it from another perspective, and then seeing what it does to the overall look of the artwork. And, a lot of times, if you can make these small improvements, they really add up. So we'll stop here. We'll go ahead and refine this again. We'll now start to draw in the anatomy. So we've worked out a lot of the structure and the base concept is there. We just need to apply the anatomy and finish it off. So with that, let's move on to our next lesson.